Howdy Spacers, and welcome back to Blank Space Dolls, and happy Valentine's Day! I'm excited to announce that I'm back with a new video tutorial for you guys, and that it's a special Valentine's Day collaboration. Those collaborating with me this time are Tiamat Creations, H. Ali Crafts, Uni Dolls, Morgs Dolls, and Who Dolls. So be sure to go and check out their videos and show them some love as well after you watch this one. And of course, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. And with that being said, let's get straight into the inspiration. Instead of allowing myself to be inspired by images like I usually do, I decided to go through my stock box and let my fabric and materials inspire me instead. So here you'll see a bunch of different red materials, some red sequin fabric, some red bias tape, red beads, and red sequins in varying sizes, and I'm going to use those to create my inspiration. As with any project, the first decision that needs to be made is which base doll we're going to use, and you can see here I'm using a Claudia Wolf as the base, as I love her rich deep skin tone, and I thought that it would contrast with the red sequin fabric so much and would look so elegant and so beautiful, so that's what I decided to go with. I also decided to go ahead and blush and prep the body off camera just to save a little bit of time and make the video a little less long. But if you guys are interested in seeing how I do my body blushing and maybe a back to basics video, let me know that in the comment section below and we will add that to the lineup. But you can see here I did do a bra and panty set because I did know that the dress was going to be slightly see-through, so I wanted to just add that extra little detail. You know how I am. Anywhere I can add glitter and crystals, I'm going to do it, so that's exactly what I did. Now that the body is prepped and complete, we can move on to the actual outfit, which you guys know is my favorite part. And for this one, we're actually going to start at the bottom of the gown and work our way up, starting with the train. And for that, I'm going to be using this circle cut quilters pattern piece or template. And it just helps quilters make circular shaped pattern pieces, but it actually works really well for doll scale dresses and skirts and things like that. And I use this quite a bit. I had my own template to begin with, but this one definitely saves me a lot of time and it allows me to easily adjust the length where needed. And of course, I'm just gonna trace the smallest circle on that template and the longest, and I'm just gonna cut that out. And this will obviously be the front of the train of the skirt. And of course, if you wanted to make a full circle skirt, you would just cut this out twice or cut it on the fold, and that would give you a perfect circle skirt shape. But for me, of course, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a slight train on the back, so I had to cut it out in two separate pieces. And you can see here, I'm using the same thing. I'm starting at that center point line, and I'm drawing initial lines, but then I'm dragging the pattern piece down a little bit, and that's going to give the train a little bit more length in the back. Then we can go ahead and cut that out just like the front. Now that you have your front and back pieces cut out, then you just want to attach them, and you can see how perfectly the center circle matches up, and you just want to tape those, and then you have a full complete pattern piece. And then I'm just going to show you here a few of the measurements. Obviously the length is going to be 14 inches and across is just over 10.5 inches. Now all you want to do is fold that pattern piece in half and place it on your fashion fabric, and you can see here my fashion fabric is going to be the sequin fabric, and you can see my variety of office supplies that I used to weigh down the pattern piece. And then I did leave a little bit less, or additional seam allowance I should say, on the center because I knew I was going to sew it up and I didn't want to lose too much of the length in doing that. So you can see I cut the center circle out a little bit smaller than I had originally drawn. And for additional stability support, I'm actually going to be using this brown tulle netting, and that's just going to give the sequin fabric a little bit more body. Just an FYI, I did cut out 2 layers of the brown tulle as well. Here you can see I've laid out the fabric, the 2 layers of tulle netting and the sequin fabric all together. You can see in my little bowl here that I originally planned on using these little seed beads, but I decided against that because it was just going to take way too long to hand sew all of those on. Possibly for another project, but not this one. So for this one, I'm going to be using Jewel It glue, and that's also going to secure the 3 layers of fabric together indefinitely. Now we can finally begin the arduous journey of hand placing all of these sequins, and yes, I put all 3 size sequins on the base of the dress for a few reasons. One is because I really wanted it to have like a faded gradient look, but I also wanted to kind of fill up that line so I didn't have to hem the bottom of the fabric itself, so this kind of helps disguise the harsh line from cutting it. Can we take a moment to just admire the sparkle of the sequins of the fabric and the hand-placed sequins? I am completely obsessed with it. Now moving on to the top, you can see here all the extra fabric that I had, and I'm really looking at the shapes that are printed into, or I guess sequined into the fabric, and I kind of wanted to try and get a heart shape because, you know, Valentine's, like groundbreaking, right? So you can see here I fold the fabric in half, and you can see that perfect little heart right in the center, and I figured I would use that for the chest area or the bodice portion of the dress itself. But it was a little bit too sheer, so I decided to double layer that up and add a second layer of the same sequin fabric. Then you're just going to sew around the entire perimeter, leaving the bottom open so that way you can turn it inside out. I also opted to hand sew this portion just because I didn't want to risk it being eaten up by my sewing machine, but also it allowed me to really control where I placed my thread stitches and allowing me to keep that heart-shaped bodice area that I had cut out originally. Then you just want to turn that inside out, and this is where I realized that I made a tiny mistake. Instead of placing the fabric good side to wrong side, I did good side to good side, so therefore the fabric was facing forward but also facing the body, which is not great when you have body blushing, but again, all of my dolls and their outfits are permanent, so I wasn't too worried about scratching away the body paint at that point. But if you yourself are doing a project like this, please do it correctly where the sequins are facing forward and on the inside versus facing the body. Now we can go ahead and gather in that area where I had originally pinned to get that cute little heart shape on the top of the bodice. Now we can attach the bodice portion to the bottom train portion that we created earlier, and I was just showing I did add a few of the little sequin details along the bust line as well, even though in the end I ended up covering them up, so it ended up being a waste of time, but what can you do? Then I went ahead and did a test fitting on her body just to see how much excess I needed to sew down. Obviously all of the excess seam allowance I'm going to fold in, and that's actually going to give her a little bit more of a curvy shape inside of the dress as well. A little tidbit for you guys. Of course, I couldn't just leave the under train of the skirt as sheer as it was. I wanted to give it even more body than it had with the tulle netting, and for that I'm actually going to be using this red tulle, and I'm just going to add a few more little ruffle skirts under that just to give the bottom train a little bit more volume, and I actually do cut out 3 layers of that. And what you're going to do is just seam those edges together and then run a gathering stitch across the entire top and connect those together, and you'll end up with something that looks a little bit like this. Now that we're done checking the dress fit and fidgeting with the placement of things, we can go ahead and place it on our actual body very carefully because again, I don't want to scratch off that body blushing. And as I stated before, I will be sewing her into this because it will give a nicer, more form-fitted fit. For the actual stitching itself also, I'm going to be using a variety of stitches. I actually start with the whip stitch, which is just going around and whipping the 2 edges together, but then as I get closer to the top where I have more excess fabric and the waist nips in a little bit more, I actually use a ladder stitch where you go up the fabric across and over to the other side, and when you pull it tight it actually pulls it as if making a ladder and pulls it a little bit tighter around those cinched areas. Here's what that dress looks like once it's been fully sewn up, and you can see what I was talking about by all that extra curve from that additional fabric that was added, which I think is definitely a plus. And then I'm going to take the little tulle skirt that I made and sew that to the base of the gown, and that's going to give the train a little bit more volume. Now it's time to begin the face-up process. Obviously, I went in with 100% acetone and removed the factory paint, and I also took acrylic paint in black and prepped the scalp for hair later. And for this one, I'm going to go in a little bit of a different order, and I'm actually starting with my General's Pastel Chalk Pencil in white to begin sketching out the eye whites and filling in her teeth. Then with Cherry Red from the Derwent Inktints watercolor pencil line, I begin sketching in her lip color. I actually went ahead and started contouring in this first layer as well, using my Jane Davenport palette pastels in the collection Lit Up, which is all of the warm tones, and I'm actually using a purplish brown color to contour her skin with. And then you'll also notice for her blush, it's a little bit brighter of a blush than I would normally do, but I tend to try to stay away from pinks on deeper skin tones and using more of like oranges and corals, just because I think it's a little bit more complementary and it helps neutralize the brightness a little bit. For the base of the eyebrows, I use my Spectrum Aqua Blend watercolor pencil in Black Umber, and then follow that up using the Ink Black Derwent Inktints watercolor pencil to add the fine line details. Of course, you want to continue to push and pull those values, so I'm actually going to lay down this light beige tone right in the highlighted areas of the face that I want before going in with a white pan pastel, and you'll see that it is quite bright, but once you seal it with Mr. Super Clear Sealant, it actually tones down and kind of deepens those colors a little bit more, which is why I wanted to put the beige first so it didn't become too harsh. Here you'll be able to see what this looks like before and after it was sealed, and you can see what I mean by when it tones down those colors a little bit. And then you just want to continue building up those colors. I'm going to go in with the same Black Umber watercolor pencil and begin sketching in the iris portion of her eye, filling that in with yellow. And this yellow is again just to add the dimension. She's not going to have yellow eyes, but you really want to play with dimension and building colors in different ways to really give the eye the depth that a natural eye would have. Same thing with the lip color as I'm doing with the faces, pushing and pulling some of those values. The areas that are closer to the light source are going to be a little bit brighter, so you see I'm concentrating this pink in the center of her lips. Her lips are going to be red, but this pink just adds a little bit of a brighter color to the center areas. And of course, I'll deepen up those corners using the same Cherry Red pencil I used before. Now I'll go in with my Caran d'Ache watercolor pencil in cream and begin to highlight on the face, on the cupid's bow, right at the eyebrow bone, and around the eye area. Now that the face is mostly complete, we can go back in and really focus on the iris portions of the eye, and I'm going back in with the Black Umber from before and just pulling that color to fade it a little bit more into the yellow, building the yellow up again, and then I'm actually going to go in and finally start adding the green watercolor pencil because I wanted her eyes to be green. But again, building that dimension is what makes the eyes feel more impactful. Also, let me just say here, obviously I'm focusing on the bottom lashes, and if you've been with me for a while on my channel, you know the evolution of bottom lashes has kind of gone from non-existent to even fuller, and I must say practice definitely makes perfect. I'm still not there yet, but I am definitely happy that they are finally getting bottom lashes. The face-up process is definitely the most time-consuming for me, obviously because you have to go in multiple layers, sometimes upwards of 7 to 10 layers depending on the opacity you want, but it really does make a difference if you take your time, really layer up the colors the way that you want them, and layer them slowly as well, because that gives you the best results, and you can see those here. Then back into the center and going right around the pupil to begin adding a little bit of the highlights in there and some of the light white strokes. For the actual eye shines, I'm going to go in with this warm white acrylic paint by Folk Art. I do paint the top of my acrylic paint bottles just because I found that sometimes paint dries a different color than it looks in the bottle. So this is a little tip for those of you out there using acrylic paint. Paint the top of your bottles, and that way you can see the color accurately, but also have less color issues when you are actually using the paint. And here's her final result of her face up. The most satisfying part is removing the protective cover and seeing how the dress looks with her new face, and I love the way that her chest details look in all of the shading that I did on her clavicles and chest area. Now our Valentine Vixen just needs some hair, and for that I'm going to be using acrylic yarn wefts, and I've shown this in previous videos before, so we're going to speed through this process. But again, if you guys are interested in seeing more in-depth tutorials on how I do things like hairstyling and body blushing and things like that, leave it for me in the comment section just so that way I'm aware and I know kind of who's interested in seeing that, and maybe I can do more dedicated videos for you. And voila! Thanks to editing magic, you can see her hair here completely done, and I actually did use the Fairy Duster Sparkle Plenty by Mad Micas. They are amazing mica powder and sparkle, very similar to Pearl-Ex powders. I will definitely leave a link to their website below, so if you're interested in any of that, be sure to check it out. And of course the outfit isn't done. I can't believe you thought that I was just going to leave it like that. I wanted to do some shoulder detailing, so here I'm taking a rectangular cut of the sequin fabric that I used for the dress, and obviously I'm placing it good side to good side again, and I'm going to cut that down and have it taper just a little bit, and then I'm going to sew around the entire perimeter of those pieces. Just like with the bodice portion before, you're going to sew around the entire perimeter of that piece. And this is what it's going to look like when that's complete, and you can see the tapered areas are going to go in the front of the dress, and I'm actually going to use a crystal to finish that off. Then I realized, why just add a crystal to the center front bodice portion? Let's add it to all of the large sequins that I placed on the bottom of the skirt as well, because we can, that's why. Of course, none of my face-ups are complete without 3D lashes, and I'm going to be using my Kiss Wispies, which you can clearly see I use quite a bit, and I probably need to get some replacements fairly soon. And we're just going to apply those to the eyeliner portion of the eye. Just look at how they look. They add so much dimension to the face, and I think that they just really make the eyes pop. And then I'm going to go in with my Tamiya acrylic paint in clear gloss and gloss the lips. Now, no elegant gown would be complete without a pair of shoes to match it, and obviously with her being the big sister body type, there's not a ton of shoes to choose from, so I decided to go with these Nephra Denial shoes, and I'm going to cut the snake detailing off, and I'm going to make my own heel. To even out and give myself a solid base on the shoes, I'm going to be using this Liquitex Basic acrylic paint, and I did buy the basic pack of these. They're quite expensive, but you can see here the color is so rich and so opaque, with the exception of the black obviously, but it covers fairly quickly, and I think I only had to use 2 or 3 coats to get full opacity, and that was mainly because of the black on the shoe itself. And this is what they look like once they're complete, and I'm actually going to paint those and cover them completely in glitter. Very much Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz vibes here. To replace the heel itself, that's right, I'm going to be using a glue stick, and you can see here I got the clear glue sticks. Those are actually my favorite. I just like the way that they look, whether I'm using them for a heel or using them on an actual project for their intended purpose. And I cut that at an angle, and I'm actually going to trim it down. And what I found is with using glue sticks as the heel, your doll tends to be able to stand on their own, which I really like because I hate having to photograph my dolls on doll stands. I will avoid it if I can, especially if I'm making my own shoes. You can see here I'm testing the balance of the heels that I created, and they work perfectly. So I can glue them and then cover them in glitter to match the rest of the shoe, and this is the final result. And with that, the custom is complete. Now let's take a look at the final photos. I hope you'll all help me in welcoming my Valentine Vixen, Ruby, to the Blank Space family. I love the richness of her skin with the red sequins and crystals. What about you? What was your favorite detail of the custom? Let me know in the comment section below. And remember, it doesn't matter who or how you love. Love is what matters. Be kind to one another and show compassion, as we really need more of that in the world right now. Happy Valentine's Day from the Space Captain, and don't forget you can see more of my customs on Instagram by searching @BlankSpaceDolls, where in my world there's always a blank space. Let's customize it together. Until next time, Spacers, see you soon.